I know how frustrated you get with all of us on a regular basis, but I really, really think you guys need to understand that a lot of the frustration is being caused by you. You know, we're frustrated by this situation too, but we're being doubly frustrated because of you. And, you know, by your own words, this was shoved down your throats, this was wrong, and it should have never happened. Should have never happened. But with your actions and with your words and your gestures, you know, you don't acknowledge that. And because this was so wrong and because this never should have happened, the only course of action that makes sense is to fight this and to fight this tirelessly, whatever it takes to right it. And, you know, we have to rely on experts, you know, it's the advice of the experts, and, you know, it just doesn't acknowledge that this was wrong. And whatever it takes, it needs to be made right. And that's where there's double frustration on our side. And I'm not even sure, you guys are, maybe you're trying to do the right thing. Maybe you're working as hard as you say. Maybe you're as frustrated as you say. And maybe I can even give you all that. And maybe you think you're doing the right thing, but you need to understand how it sounds to us. And you're not acknowledging this was wrong. And no matter what, it needs to be made right. I don't care what it costs. I don't really, no offense, I don't care what they say. It's wrong. It needs to be made right. And I would expect that town officials would take that approach and take that perspective. And that's not what we're getting. So you need to understand that our frustration is doubled by that. And I don't know if you don't get that, but there it is. And the third thing is, you know, you're saying you're going with a decision because you don't have any examples of the material being trucked out successfully. Well, you don't have examples of it being unsuccessful either.
Did you guys know the FEMA and EPA were contacted in 2012 when the problems first started? Did FEMA and EPA?
EPA?
Yes.
I don't remember what it first time.
There was emails that were published on NJ.com that FEMA and
You're
EPA.
talking about the emails from the DEP to FEMA?
No, there was no emails from DEP. It was all internal. FEMA.
But somebody contacted them. And I was wondering if any of you were aware of those at the time in 2012.
I believe they say that this was a Superfund site, and that's what it was for.
It wasn't a Superfund site, no. But they were trying to help, and they were also, because DEP contacted them, if I remember correctly, and they were offering, the EPA was offering assistance both in monitoring and money, and they also said, you know, they could use Sandy funds at the time because they thought Sandy was part of this, and they had to fill out, the NJDEP had to fill out a form for this.
Let me cut you off, Bob, because when I found that out yesterday, I called the commissioner, I called the staff to try to get the commissioner to call me, and that was first and foremost on the list, was these emails that currently showed up on NJ.com.
Right.
And obviously rather a little consultant if that's the direction that actually happened. Reading the email I saw that Phil Morocco sent me he sent me the whole chain. Sorry, Bill, I didn't see that. He sent me the whole chain, so I saw it in the winter, I read it a couple of times. He said nothing ever crossed his desk, but he would look into it, and I sent him the chain of emails as well. So I do expect a further answer.
Yeah, from what the EPA said, it was pretty high up that a decision was made there, and that would have helped out the township a lot at that point in time.
I agree.
The monitoring would have been put in, the township wouldn't have had to pay for it and stick their necks out. And that kind of goes back to the whole thing of trusting the DEP and anything they do on this site at all at this point. And it started in the beginning and continues on. You were talking about the core samples and that obviously you guys couldn't go in there and do the testing, which I understand. and one of the reasons was that you couldn't break through the cap. On the site right now, there's places where there is no cap. It's just mud. There is no cap left. So couldn't you guys go in there now and dig a hole through there and take some samples and then throw some dirt back on top?
They would arrest us.
Excuse me?
They would arrest us.
DEP has to approve.
But you're allowed to do environmental testing. You're not interfering with the NJDEP's. You're not interfering with what they've done up there. All you're doing is going up there, taking a core sample, taking it back out, and throwing something back in there to make sure nothing happens, no gas is released.
Yeah, well, we have to bring the equipment up there and everything like that too. So I think that's.
How about a shallow
What
sample?
DEP advises that we can't without DEP's permission.
But that's not what the EO says.
What was that about?
I said that's not what the EO says. The emergency order says you can go on site and do that.
We thought it said we could get samples as well. The judge installed this different.
Okay, they're making the law here. They're saying what you can and cannot do. It says you can do it, and now they're saying you can't do it. It's in the law. So I don't understand why we can't fight that and find out what is in this landfill. Because I can tell you from personal experience that there's a lot worse stuff up there.
There's also a provision in EO that says that we cannot interfere with them during the remediation process.
That's not interfering with them. They're not doing anything right now.
That's your opinion. Their opinion is that it is. And I can tell you, if we went up there and brought the equipment up there, they'd run into a court and the judge would stop us. I mean, that's
But-
my opinion. It's right down in your environmental.
Okay, well, that might happen, but just like in our last court thing, the time it would take them to go to court and get them to stop you, you would already have samples and be able to send them out.
They have state police up there.
State police aren't going to stop you. I've talked to the state police, but you haven't
You're
tried.
not gonna be able to get a contract.
And we're all willing to get arrested here to stop the site, so are you guys ready to do that? This is absolutely ridiculous. You have the power as an assemblyman to do something about this. And I'd like to know what the other towns think of this, because you're our township lawyer, and you're going for us as the township and as the council, but not for the people. And the people elected you to that position.
Yeah.
And it's not just us, it's other towns as well. And the DEP is going out there and saying to all these other towns, oh my God, you can't do anything here because it's going to be such a disaster. Which is untrue, because we've already opened up the landfill, and there's really not that many bad smell or toxic gases coming out of there. But I know that, that's just in a few holes as well. So, so you're basically saying that we couldn't go up there, and we're not going to try.
If we hired a contractor to go up there, and the state,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
if we hired a contractor to go up there, and the state police stopped them, they're not gonna disobey an order from the state police, it's not.
I just want to add, for us to go up there, we need a disruption permit. The DEP is exempt because of who they are, but let's just say Major went up there with a licensed driller. To get the permit, I gotta get the permit from the DEP. They're not gonna issue us the permit to even go and go on the site to do it. That was the whole idea of using their holes. Plus, right now, they have trenches everywhere. I was at the site this afternoon before I came here, after I couldn't get the Menardo. And you can't get to the site because they're, well, maybe in a few days you can, but they're doing the trenching now for the pipeline. And so there's kind of a cutoff and you can't get on it, but the practical sense, the council's right, that the DEP controls the permit to even go in, and there's no driller that's going to risk his license nor my license to do that. I assure you, we made very good observations during the cuttings of the 21 articles, and that was
You saw C&D material is what you saw, and it
yeah,
didn't look.
it was wet, and it was nothing, no surprises. And there's pictures in the report.
Right, I also saw there was a picture in the report of a front loader depositing C&D material, which I would assume was the cuttings, into a pile.
On the toe of the landfill, correct.
Right, so why didn't you guys take some of those cuttings and test those? I know it's
Would
not,
you believe that I made a call to Ed Putman, can I please go down there and take some composite samples, and they said no. So, believe me.
why didn't you just go there and take it?
Because I have a license, I'm not gonna jeopardize it, that's
So
why.
why didn't the
Just the
township?
reasons that,
I mean,
you know,
this is
Councilman
crazy.
Bucco is telling me the same. There's limits to what we can do. I'm not gonna,
I understand your license, I absolutely understand, 'cause it's your way of business
well, it
and what
also
you're
shows
doing.
my consistency, how I treat all my clients and how I take it
Absolutely.
seriously.
So I guess that would come to my next point is, why is the town not publicly demanding an investigation of the DEP? You have the power. So does the Morris County freeholders, so does Assemblyman Bucco, so does Senator Bucco, so does Assemblyman Carroll as well. Why aren't we doing this? Because this is a travesty of justice here.
Absolutely, yeah.
Several people have talked about it, it's been reported already to several different people, we've never objected to any investigation going on. I believe, and I'll have to check on it, because I don't have the answer right now, but I believe it's been turned over to other people to look at.
But when it,
What's happening with that, I don't know, I'll check on it.
well, I would think it would come from the local level first and work its way upwards in the chain. And you would have to publicly go out and say that and put together a press release like you have done for this meeting, as well as a few other things. It's kind of important because that, you know,
I know it's been turned over to different places, so I'll have to check it out. I'll get that for sure.
did you speak to Morton about the tapes?
About what?
About the tapes?
The tapes?
The tapes, yeah, the tapes from the actual DEP meeting, from at the high school. He was going to listen to the tapes. You had publicly said that he was going to listen to the tapes. I was wondering if he actually ever did, and did he make any comments?
I would have to look at my notes, but he did make a comment that he did see some of them after the fact. Again, I kind of raised him for his presentation. You know, I think as Bill said, the work wasn't horrible, the presentation dropped in. And I think it even answered, as Mr. Rath pointed out earlier, they worked on a landfill before.
Right.
So he did, and actually I talked to him about the fact sheet, which we got, and they started addressing some of those questions, so, yeah.
But they're addressing the questions, but they're not changing the plan.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's all I have. More people.
On the lines of, oh, I'm sorry, Roxbury, Barjula, 17 Lincoln Drive. Roxbury. On the lines of gaining access to the site for your samples and the emergency order that you just spoken about, that Martin signed, and the last part of that report, it did say that you would be able to have access to getting the samples. My suggestion is that you probably would be best going with the EPA.
The EPA's been contacted, and they
So-
deferred.
I'm
to
sorry?
The EPA has been contacted, and they deferred to the DEP.
And they referred you to the,
No, they deferred to the DEP.
well, I sent an emergency violations to the EPA explaining the problems with our, trying to keep their odors from being toxic, and they did send me back a reply. And along with that report, I did send that our town is trying to get the core samples, and they were told no. And the EPA is supposed to look into these violations. So I would think you would have heard something, but my suggestion is perhaps maybe you could write a formal letter to the violation, that we're not being heard, and if you didn't need a sample, they probably could help you get it from the EPA.
There was a letter recently, one of you guys probably refresh my memory, but it was about deferring to the DEP.
Could you speak into the speaker? I'm sorry,
I'm sorry, I apologize, my fault. That the EPA deferred to the DEP with the, knowing that they were working under the executive order, so I'll follow up on that as well.
It is a legal violations, number that's listed on, that I did request it with, and I can send it to you.
Violation of,
From the EPA on the violations page, on their office that sets violations. And so that can be done through
the
there.
DEP violated?
That we will, any violation that we see out, EPA, DEP, or anyone, you can send that through the violations headquarters,
What is the violation?
the EPA violations headquarters.
Yeah, you can send in a complaint through their violation headquarters, correct?
So that's all I'm suggesting, is if you, as a group, you can get together and see if you could agree to take the responsibility to send that out and request for the core samples. That would be one direction that you might be able to go into.
I'll look into that.
And you would do it as a group.
There's a big contact with that specific question.
Hello, Diane Weinfeld, 8 Henry Drive. I'm not one to get up and speak, but I think you should hear from me, because I don't know, I haven't done my homework, I don't know too much. But I'll tell you, many of my neighbors, we don't smell in my neighborhood. But they don't come to these meetings, these past 2 meetings, because I'm not political, or we don't smell it, so it can't affect us. I try telling them, you go to ShopRite, you go to Walmart, you're walking around, you maybe get coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, bagel at Java Joe's. Where do you think they get their water? You say it's not the water, whatever. But just things that are racing in my mind. My son's graduating from high school. I thought he was safe in a closed building. I hear now that the high school is getting the whatever, the smells. And one choice he had was county. But I think he is going away to college, so I think I'm going to truck my son out for sure. Luckily, he has 2 more months to be in the fumes. And also, shopping. I think I'm going to go to Flanders instead of our ShopRite. And Walmart, I'll go to International Trade Zone. Don't you think other people will do that? And if you look at our Ledgewood Mall, how empty is it? And how much more empty will it get? Because people don't want to shop where they smell, where they hear that I'm going to be contaminated. But I don't know anything. I didn't do my homework, but just
I appreciate
one of the masses.
But this is what we have to address sometimes, the high school.
The state health department did air sampling most of the schools, and there was no detect most of the readings. Most all the readings were below any allowed limits.
Right, but they use Suma canisters as well there.
I can't speak to
But I'm telling you, a lot
I
of
can't
people
speak to
think
the
if I can't
technology
smell
that
in
they
my
use.
house, I'm fine. But I said, do you have to come to these meetings? Because people, their kids can't go out and play, even if they don't have asthma. To mow their lawn, they have to go out for a half hour, an hour a day, an hour a week, and mow their lawn. They can't go outside their houses. How would you like to live that way? They live in our town. They're human beings. How could you not support them? I'm here as a body. Well, I find out now, well, of course it affects me, because I went to ShopRite, Walmart, and everything for the past couple of years. This is insane. And I understand that it's being thrown down Roxbury, that we have to take this stuff, but we have to fight it. We have to involve Mount Olive. It's not just Roxbury, it's going to other areas. And they come shopping here, and they smell the smells, and I'm not going to, what do you call, Bowtie Cinema. Now I'm going to go to, what do you call, the Rockaway one. Everyone, our stores are going to be cleared.
That's
I
right.
would.
And also, why is this meeting on April 15th, which is tax day, people who are crunching their numbers? It's also spring break, and as you have said, second day of Passover.
We want to be fine with the meeting. But I want everybody, I know, please, go to the website, look at the information that we've got, look at the data, look at the levels that are out there, make your own decision as to how it potentially is affecting you. Okay? I mean, that's the data, like you said, people have it, they should avail themselves of that information.
Well, I know a realtor who said when people come in to look at a house, they come to her realtor agency and they say, not Roxbury or not Ledgewood. And I have a neighbor who wants to sell soon, and so I asked this friend who's a realtor, I said, can she say Sucasana? Just because they don't associate, it's Ledgewood and Roxbury, but we all know it's the same.
And I know, I did not bring it tonight, but we had a realtor on his own send us information that goes up to the 12th, it goes to December of last year in regards to properties and home sales. We'll get you that information, okay? I think it's important for everybody to
No,
have.
I don't need the information. People are looking for a home and they're telling the
Well, I'm
realtors,
just-
no, I don't want to be by that
I
dump.
don't have the exact information, but I can tell you that the listings were on average about 58 days, and they were a few $1,000s off of what they were being asked. And there was approximately 15 of them, but I can get you that data, and that's through December.
And I'm sorry this happened during your term because it seems it was going to happen to whoever was in office, but we have to fight it. We have to try and involve the rest of the town because they don't know. They think if I don't smell in my backyard, it's not my problem. I said, wouldn't you want them to help you if you were involved? I don't know.
One more time and I'm done. Ken Collins again. From the emergency order, I'm going to read the paragraphs and explain something. The last 3 paragraphs of the emergency order say that neither the owners and operators of the landfill nor their employees, contractors, consultants, or agents shall interfere with the actions of department personnel and the department's contractors on or off the landfill, nor impede the department's full access to the landfill in any manner. Now that paragraph pertains to the owners and operators of the landfill, their employees, contractors, consultants, or agents. The paragraph is 1 sentence. The next paragraph is also 1 sentence, and it says, the township of Roxbury and its contractors shall have full access to the landfill to monitor all hydrogen sulfide control measures and to obtain test samples for the purpose of environmental monitoring. That paragraph spells out Roxbury's rights for entry to the landfill. The next paragraph is also 1 sentence. It says, except as expressly permitted by the department, no person may trespass on the landfill or disturb or disrupt any protected measure or control established or installed pursuant to this emergency order. That paragraph pertains to individuals, not the township of Roxbury. Your rights are clearly spelled out, and if you're willing to just lie down and let the judge tell you that those are not your rights, you are doing wrong by your entire community. That's what it says. Stand up in front of the court, exercise your rights, and go and take your samples. Go explain this to the county sheriff, go get your sample person, and go down to the gate of the landfill and tell the state police with the sheriff at your back that you're coming in to take your samples because the EO says you can. If you don't have the guts to do that, you don't have the guts to stand up for your community. Are you willing to do that?
Who see and read what you just read differently, and the judge agreed with the DEP.
So are you willing to do that? Because the judge obviously interpreted it wrong. It's plain English.
No, we went to court. We brought them to court over that very thing. What are you looking for? We're not going to get.
I'm looking for you to stand up for your community.
We're not going to go shooting people trying to get on the site.
I'm not asking you to shoot anybody. I just spelled out what you should do. I just explained to you what you should do.
The state police.
I just explained to you what you should do. Mr. Schultz has been up to the gate. He's talking to the state police. They're not going to stop you. Why don't you go get the sheriff? Show the sheriff your ticket. Explain to the sheriff what your rights are according to this order and exercise them.
You aware that one of your supporters was up there a week ago and was detained after he ran from?
I'm sorry, my supporters.
They thought
supporters?
I can't hear you. One of
Who are my supporters?
one of the supporters did.
Since I don't know who you're talking about, I don't think that's true. I don't think one of my supporters.
I'm not gonna play word games with you, okay? Somebody was up there who supports you verbally here at the meeting.
Well, the state's playing word games with you, and you're not standing up
right.
for your right. I'm leaving. Good luck, Jim, in your political career. Good night, ladies.
I think it's
Great job.
I think it's pretty clear that the council isn't really willing to really do very much. But the throwing your hands up it's a little bit pathetic. And as far as I know, do you guys understand that the emergency order is not state law and that there's still political avenues that you can ask the state legislature, go ask the state legislature for attention, because I know individuals in this community who have spent hours doing that, and I don't know that any of you have spent the hours that we have trying to get attention for this, because the emergency order was written under the the Closure Act that came out last year. So it doesn't supersede anything. What you need to do, what you have to do, is go to the state legislature and ask them to take oversight of what the DP is trying to do through the emergency order, and if it takes writing an amendment to that law, to prevent the DP from just bulldozing over all of you, because you obviously are not going to take it to the courts anymore. You did a really crap job of taking it to court the first time. Now, if you're not willing to at least do that, do something that is within your right and within your power, and put your name as our elected officials doing that the way we do as individuals all the time, week after week. If you can't do that, then please step down, all of you, because you are useless to all of us.
Hi, Maureen Lucifer again. As you know, I'm always after you to notify the 23,000 residents of Roxbury that they have a problem. And Diane came to the meeting tonight because she's a good citizen, but she didn't know anything about what was going on here either, because you haven't notified them. And as Myrna said, we should all resign. If you can't even take this to court, take the advice of another attorney, and do your due diligence. You're not doing anything for us. You're harming us. And you especially, because you put your signature on the council, the Highlands Council, okay to come in here. You didn't warn us. You didn't fight for us. You should really step down. We all outnumber you. And if you tell the 23,000, you will be gone.
These emails that surfaced last week are interesting. I know Mr. Zelli's been on the site probably just as much as anyone else. Do we believe that the site accepted Superstorm Sandy debris? I mean, we've seen truck reports from the DEP, from Birdsall. You've seen the site for yourself. I mean, just even if it's speculation, do we think that that could be a possibility?
The only time I heard it, they said they did not accept it.
Your opinion,
Whether
Mr.
that's
Zelli?
actually not, I'll leave it to Mr. Zelli.
There's been speculations, but I have not seen anything in writing. There, again, speculations, and I heard someone, Mr. Tuttle's earlier said that there was 2 locations it came from. He didn't think it was him that said that. But there was a deposition that was given, or maybe it was court testimony during the court case by Bashar, former principal engineer at Birdsall, that talked to that the material was wet when it came in. But I've never, it was just always speculated. I don't know where it came from.
I have pictures of it.
That took place during our local court case.
Local court.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason why why it's interesting is because the EPA was willing to come out here under speculation, and they explicitly said right here, we are ready to go immediately on this mission if the state requests our assistance through FEMA, because the state didn't prove, the state suspected, and they were using the FEMA grant, and it would have been a shared cost to come out and do some investigations. And then the DEP went back and said, thank you for your excellent effort on this. DEP senior management decided not to pursue this option. So I'm wondering, could this be revisited? Because I think a lot of us would feel a lot more comfortable if there was some oversight being done by an agency like the EPA on this. And maybe their testing protocols would include or mandate some of this core sampling. You know, could this program be revisited? What would it take to do that?
I brought it up, as I stated earlier, with the commissioner yesterday, and he says we were looking at different, this is at the end of 2012, so this is, very, very, very early on. They were talking to people about equipment, generally speaking. He said no offer was put across his desk, and he goes, plus it was Sandy money, and this wasn't a Sandy site. So that's as far as we got. So I'll bring it up with them again. I have no problem bringing it up.
Well, I think they're the wrong people to bring it up with because they clearly, for whatever reason,
They have
are not interested in having them participate.
Well, two things. I think there has to be Sandy site to get the FEMA funding. DEP has to say it's a Sandy site. DEP has to request the funds.
Well, I think that's why they said it would be a shared cost, because they would come out to investigate, and then if it did show that there was sandy debris there, then FEMA would cover it, but initially there would be a shared cost. And if you read through the emails, that was one of the EPA representatives' opinion why the state didn't go for it, because they didn't want to pay that shared cost for the testing. But, where I'm going with this is, the township sent a press release out a few weeks ago, which I appreciate, I think everyone here appreciated, showing their dismay with the DEP presentation. And we explicitly said that we demand the state show us compelling evidence that supports the plan that, they want to implement, or any additional plan, makes the most sense and will result in the best solution for the township. And I don't think they've done that. So I don't think we should take the heat off of them, because, we made those statements. They haven't given us any of that information. And this core sampling is important because from what I'm hearing, they dug these wells, the levels weren't as bad as we thought. I thought I heard you say something, someone had an instrument and they said there wasn't a lot of sulfate present or something like that. There's been some speculation and some theories that majority of this pile isn't the worst offender of the H2S. And if that's true, and we took these core samples and say 80% of it has very low sulfate content, at least that material could probably be excavated safely. And we'll never know that. So I think that's the compelling evidence that we need. And I think we need to do whatever it takes to get it. I don't know. I think it's worth a try, because I listened to the tapes in court. And from what I gathered from it was that the DEP or the Attorney General convinced the judge that what we would be doing would be holding them up, and it would be holding up the gas mitigation efforts. And because there was a health crisis, that was probably not in the best interest of the community. And I think if we revisit that in this stage, I don't see what we would be holding them up. Right now they've dug the wells, they're installing some piping. We're not holding anything up. We're not going to compromise the cap in any way that it hasn't been compromised already and didn't result in any issues. And I think the judge would be willing to hear that out. I mean, you got people here with wells that live hundreds of feet from the site. You have hundreds of people with wells. If their wells get contaminated with lead or arsenic, how the hell do they know where it's coming from? They'll never know if it's coming from the site, because the site was never tested. You don't know if the site has maybe lead paint from a drywall that was torn down and dumped on the site. Old appliances with toxic chemicals in them. We'll never know. And I think it's a disservice to the community to cover that stuff up without knowing what's there. I think that we really need to get cooperation from the DEP, and until we get that, these meetings are just going to get longer and longer. And we don't want to be here. You don't want to be here either. But it's the reality of it. We have to live with this, and this is our way of trying to ensure that what happens is the best for us. This is all we have.
Appreciate that comment.
Aaron Markworth, 36 Conkling. I'll be really quick. You know, you guys keep falling back that we had a problem with the first injunction, and I totally see that. You know, that poor lawyer who's had success against the DEP in the past was basically put up in front as a sacrificial lamb for the basis of the law, and the decision that the judge made was on Crow and DeGioia, and the first part of being adversarial and objecting was not met, and that's all the judge made his decision on. There was no argument that those wells, which is all that injunction was for, was going to stop irreparable harm. The wells are in now, and the wells will probably help mitigate the gas. And the real issue that we have is with the capping process in itself. This capping process is permanent, and it's an overextension, and it's an impingement on the rights of what the Highlands Council has and the Regional Master Plan has to say with making sure that this final cap and the final solution that we want is in line with the Regional Master Plan. And your argument against the original injunction was flawed, but for what we want now, we believe that the geomembrane is necessary to stop this irreparable harm. That's an impermeable layer. You're just basically creating an abscess up there. And you know, the question is when we looked at cost and logistics today, it seems like it's pretty much a wash. So our underlying claim that the Highlands Council and the Highlands Act has jurisdiction, along with the new legacy landfill law, pretty much makes sure that we can make the argument for the second point of Crow and DeGioia that we're supported by the letter of the law, and we have a good argument. The third part is comparing the plaintiff, the burden on the plaintiff versus what our burden would be. And I think people pretty much have an idea that if the Highlands Council assumes jurisdiction and makes this conform to the Regional Master Plan, that any hardships the DEP suffers are not going to be as bad as what our hardships are going to be. And the fourth part is public interest. And as you can see, we maybe didn't have as many people here tonight as what we had before when the DEP came. But people aren't happy, and they're not going to let you guys hide behind the emergency order, and they're not going to let you guys hide behind the lack of information that the DEP isn't providing you. So you guys kind of got one chance left, and if you don't do it, we're going to do it. And if we have to do it ourselves, it's not going to be pretty. And we're going to start questioning conflicts of interest. We're going to start questioning why we haven't seen transparency from not just the DEP, but also you guys.
Seeing no other public, we'll close the public portion. Takes us to item 7. We'll hold 8, 9, 10, and 11. We have no items. We're all communication package.
Make a motion, we do.